After this lesson, you can design an onboarding and activation lifecycle flow that will help new and free users experience the core value fast and prime them for conversion to paid. So first of all, let's look at the difference between onboarding and activation. Onboarding teaches the user how to use the app, how to get set up, and how to make sure that their experience with the app is successful. Whereas activation is the moment where the user experiences that value for the first time. So your strategy should be to identify the first meaningful action that predicts long-term retention over time. So now let's talk about onboarding as a conversion engine. Product onboarding should collect valuable information about the user so that we can personalize CRM messages down the line. It should also drive activation through educating the user, making them feel confident that they can be set up for success. Another thing that we want to do at this stage is to set the expectation that there is a paid and premium version of this product. And we want to, really importantly, avoid feature overload and hard selling too early. We want to give the user time to get into the app, explore what it's about, and activate. And so what's lifecycle marketing's role in that? Well, first of all, lifecycle marketing should be educating users so that they understand how to get started. So we can nudge, for example, the right actions early, and we can also create a series of messages with an appropriate timing so that we're not overwhelming users with all features at the one time. So a newsletter or a series of welcome emails can be a really good example of that. We also want to reinforce what the app is for through timely messages that connect onboarding steps to real user goals in the product. Another thing we can do is to spot drop-off and confusion quickly, so we can respond with help and timely reminders to bring people back into the product to try again or to find what they're looking for. And here's a really good example from MailChimp. This is an email that is sent to MailChimp users to educate them so that they understand how to get started. It also breaks down what communications and guidance that the user can expect to receive from MailChimp next. And I marked that as an additional highlight because I think that's a really good strategy to set users up in terms of expectations from what they can expect with the product, and also what they can expect through the marketing messaging throughout. Another thing that we mentioned was reinforcing what the app is for. And here's some really nice push examples that I found from Airbnb, Sleep Tracker, and Spotify. They use follow-up pushes to answer the question that users that may have downloaded and then become inactive are silently asking, why did I download this app and why should I bother? And then for spotting drop-off and confusion, we've got these two examples from Viber and Headspace. Viber says, long time no see, you can make calls to your friends for free, tap to try it. So they're reminding you, they're reminding you what the purpose of the app is, and they're encouraging you to kind of come back and give it a go. Same as Headspace, they're saying, rise and shine, start your day with an easy 3-minute meditation, try one now. And the wording of easy and try it now also gives that impression to the user that they can try again and that they're not going to be overwhelmed when they come back to the product. Now, let's talk about activation. Activation is what precedes habit formation. Users are never going to create a habit out of something that they've never tried or they feel overwhelmed by or they don't understand. How the type of activation metrics that you should be tracking should be moving beyond app open. So you want to be looking at meaningful actions in the product that indicate engagement over time. So for example, opening the app is just a vanity metric. You might get many users that open the app and close it, but never do anything of value. So we want to be tracking things like, for a meditation app, first meditation complete. Or in this example, we look at 3 meditations complete in 7 days, because in some cases we see that if you do the action a certain number of times, that correlates with higher retention over time. So the goal of this is to focus CRM on putting users to this kind of magic number. So is that action once? Is it twice? Is it 3 times? What is the action in the first place? How many times does the user need to do it? And then how can we help with CRM messaging get users to complete that as fast as possible? So again, let's look at lifecycle marketing's role in this. So first of all, we want to move users from the setup moment to action by nudging them to complete that one behavior that unlocks the real value. So in our meditation example, even though users have gone through the onboarding and they might now be dropped in the core part of the app, it still helps to message those users and say, ready to try a meditation. It will only take 3 minutes, for example. Let's get started. That can give somebody the extra nudge that they need. We also want to reduce friction at critical moments. And we do that through timely guidance, reminders, or reassurance when users hesitate. And I've got an example of that later in the slides. Another thing that lifecycle marketing should be doing is identifying who activates and who doesn't activate, so that we can send messages that remind people or give somebody an additional nudge to come back if they've dropped off for whatever reason. And most importantly, we want to turn early success and momentum into a habit over time. So if we see that somebody is off to a great start, we want to utilize that and encourage people to keep coming back and build that habit over time. Here's a great example of being able to move users from setup to action. And this example is from Film Supply. This welcome email reinforces the value of what the user has signed up to, and also displays a clear call to action to get users straight to their first footage to experience that value. Another example of reducing friction at critical moments is from Strava. Users sign up with Strava and they're probably thinking, like, how do I get my friends onto this app? Where do I find my friends so that we can log exercise together? Strava sends this email to remind people that the friends are already there. And this is pulled from, for example, their contact book in their phone, or from other platforms that they may have signed up with, for example, through Meta, Instagram, this type of thing. And what this really does is it reminds users that they don't need to hunt and search for friends that are already on Strava. And in fact, the app is going to show them those friends and they can instantly connect. And for identifying who activates and who doesn't, we've got 2 examples here from booking.com and one from TripAdvisor. And these are push notifications that are sent to users who maybe browsed a holiday or a stay, but they never actually booked, so they never activated in the end. And these serve as reminders to come back and complete that action. Turning early success into momentum is also important, as we discussed. And this is a nice example from Airbnb, where Airbnb sends a notification to users to say, that's it, your booking is confirmed, you've completed that first action, but you can also come back and get more details about your trip by clicking on this push notification. And that just encourages, deeper engagement with the product beyond just set and forget. The trip is booked and we can move on. It really brings people back into the product again after that moment. So here's what onboarding and activation look like together. So I've laid this table out to show the different steps in the journey, what the user is trying to do at that step, and then what lifecycle messaging does here. So first, we look at installs and sign up. The user is basically trying to decide at this point if the app or the product is worth their time. And what we want to do as lifecycle marketers is to reduce friction and set expectations and remove uncertainty so that users can make that decision quicker and easier. At the onboarding completion stage, we again want to get the user wants to get through that stage without friction. They want to be able to understand easily. They don't want to have to think deeply about what the app does or what it's about. And again, it's our job to explain why setup matters. So for example, if you're asking many, many questions, which is quite common in health and fitness apps, we want to make it really clear to users like why this is important. And it's so that, for example, we can personalize their experience and show plans that work for them. And for the stage of users reaching the first value action, we want the user wants to try that core value for the first time, especially if you're new to a product. That's when users are excited to get started. And so what we want to be doing is nudging that action and reassuring when there's hesitation. And again, if you think back to some of the push notification examples, these clearly show that, just sending a nudge to a user to say, it'll only take a certain amount of time, tap to try, can be very effective at this stage. For seeing success or the outcome, we want the user is trying to understand whether or not after activating this product worked for them. So again, it can help to send messaging to the users to show and help them recognize that that moment was valuable. For example, they've completed a trip, and so we can reinforce them and get them excited about that trip so that they can understand, that was easy to do, that felt good, and I might like to do that again in the future. And for the next meaningful step, the user is trying to decide whether or not to continue with the app. So this is to reinforce longer term engagement and retention. And we want to, as lifecycle marketers, reinforce the progress that they've already made in the app and show them what comes next. So now let's do another practical exercise together. We'll first outline the onboarding activation journey together. Hi everybody, and welcome to the next practical exercise where we're going to design the first activation path together. The goal of this exercise is to design a simple onboarding and activation flow that helps new or free users reach their first moment of value. Some simple rules to follow: pick one core action that represents the first value, and I'll show you an example of that. Focus on intent and sequence. Do not worry about channels or copy at this stage. And remember that this is a lightweight design exercise. It's not a full flow. So if you navigate to the second tab called First Activation Path, at the top here, I've left a table for you to fill in with 4 different columns. Column A talks about the steps in the user journey. So we've got installs, so the user signing up. We've got onboarding completion, reaching the first value action, seeing success or an outcome, and when the user is encouraged toward the next meaningful step. Now, what I want you to do is fill this table in and outline what the user does, the specific behavior that they do at this step. So for example, for installing and signing up, the user might have, downloaded, they might have answered some questions as part of the onboarding, and then they might have registered their email as an example. We want you to be really specific in this column. Then for C, we want you to think about, what does lifecycle marketing support at this step? In this case, it would be helping to reduce friction and encouraging the user to complete onboarding through education and understanding. And then here in column D, I want you to also include an example message, and that could either be push, email, or in-app messaging. So a quick recap of why this stage matters. So really importantly, conversion doesn't happen by accident. We need to prime users to help them understand the product, educate them to know how to get started, and then set expectations that there is a premium experience and make sure that that's visible. Onboarding and activation, as we talked about, is just the starting point. That's the beginning of the journey, and lifecycle messaging should follow. And CRM is what helps turn intent for whatever the habit or the product use case is into real usage over time. So what I want you to take away from this section is that acquisition without activation can lead to a leaky bucket, where users download the app, but then they immediately leave, and you're burning through new users over time.